Hello, I'm Justin Spicer, and this is my presentation on my thesis paper, which was titled The Impact of Social Media on Music Community Distribution. The goal of my paper was to show how social media is making it easier and more efficient for musicians to reach fans directly with their music, and also to reflect how fans are equally reaching out to bands and genres that they enjoy, and taking control of that and building their own communities. First, I talk about how social tags, which are what people write and attach to digital files such as MP3s or WAV files, how those are important in building communities. I explore how they are generated, which is from different ideas, such as acoustic descriptors, which is like classical guitar, classic rock. The sound of it, like a flute, if it's an orchestra, those are strong identifiers that people can relate with. But I also discuss more of the emotional or personal attachments that people will put on social tags. For example, of an emotion or an abstract idea that relates to more of a niche community or a certain sect of people that these communities want to reach through their music. These tags allow for easier sharing and a wider proliferation of a lot of music that may not otherwise be heard. Most people hear their music still from radio or from recommendations from immediate friends, but the way that social media is beginning to form communities allows for people to gravitate towards people that otherwise they would not have interactions with. Pardon me. And social tags are a strong gravitational pull in allowing people to find different music and to build communities to communicate with each other and to pull their power together to communicate with bands, with record labels, both major and independent, and with promoters, etc., to get what they want heard, how they want to hear it, and where they want to hear it. Matching music goes beyond just these social tags as well. I mean, it involves blogging. People are very aware of a website like Pitchfork, but I mean, there are smaller blogs that are such niche focused on like maybe cassettes or vinyl, on bands in Africa and like Sub-Sahara, and these social tags help bring people, like readers of blogs, into these communities and help them discover music in ways that otherwise they would have had to go to the local record store 20, 30 years ago and maybe talk with some people, maybe talk with the clerks, and maybe hear an album or a song from these groups. And now they're just widely accessible, and even these bands on other sides of the globe are putting these songs on websites like Bandcamp and SoundCloud or Spotify, or even streaming them on Last.fm, where fans can tag them appropriately, where bands can tag them appropriately to reach the people that they want to reach, and fans as well. So I went through the steps here of the literature, trying to understand what was being written, and surprisingly a lot of it focused on these ideas. One guy who kept showing up a lot was Paul Lemire, who is part of a group called the Echo Nest, who kind of took social tagging, the idea of it as a human function, and started exploring it through algorithms, not necessarily trying to generate social tags, but to understand social tags. And as I read papers that followed in line with this, and it turns out Paul Lemire is just one of hundreds of people exploring these kind of ideas. I came down to my what I needed to prove, which was what tools exist, how those tools are used and by whom, and what effect these tools have on music distribution. And I've touched a little bit on that, but I'd like to get a little bit more. First, the idea of what tools are at disposal. I have mentioned stuff like Bandcamp, websites like Bandcamp and SoundCloud, and streaming services like Spotify, which are gaining in popularity. But these are also places where bands can immediately put music up can immediately connect with fans, and it's readily available across the globe. Bandcamp especially has kind of revamped itself recently to become more of a social media, social networking type site, where you can like a particular song, like a particular album, follow a band, and SoundCloud is following accordingly. And by using these tools, bands are able to hone in on who is listening to their music and being able to control how they're tagged. Tagging is very important on Bandcamp. You can see them. Some people are very broad with their tags, just saying rock, pop, but some hone in on their region, on similar sounding bands, on emotions or ideas they feel that they touch upon, maybe something in literature that somebody is familiar with. You kind of draw from those ideas and draw people into your music. A big part of all these sites are active participation. It does require not only active participation from the bands putting their music on these sites, but by fans who are going to listen to this music and then share it also via social media. It's one thing to like something on Bandcamp, it's one thing to make a playlist on Spotify, but it's another to take that playlist or to take that particular track and then share it on Facebook, to share it on Twitter. And these are also tools that are very integral to getting music out for different people to hear. I have personal experience with this, tweeting music and having people favorite the tweet or retweet it. Same with Facebook, and it's a phenomenon that I think anybody can relate to. You look in your feed and you're going to see a friend sharing something that you may not have heard and that they have probably discovered because of the chain of sharing, for lack of a better word, that happens when people are finding bands that are tagged appropriately and carrying that over. They're finding these from these communities that are established from these tags and from social media, but how they're bringing that to their own community. Like, I'm trying to differentiate between the online community and your friends, your family. Those are two separate entities that these services kind of bring together. They kind of overlap, even though you interact with each in a different way. It's interesting to watch third parties and traditional media, radio, magazines, television, use social media to reach these fans as well, and that's another tool that bands can tap into immediately to reach the audience they need to reach. The second question I tackle is the idea of what tools are used and by whom. I just mentioned traditional media. They are using these social media tools in many different ways. For example, these communities are able to take the feedback that they gain, the influence that they have, and create user-generated radio playlists. There's a state Jack, for example. There's a lot of these clear channel stations that go by Jack that are basically playlists that are somewhat generated by computers, but also have a lot of feedback from social media. People's Choices Awards. This is an idea that has been in movies for a while, but is now coming to music. I know MTV has people vote on winners for their MTV Music Awards, but this is something that a lot of award shows are bringing in. Not necessarily the Grammys, but websites that give out awards, even if it's just a name, are using these ideas to engage these communities. Playlists on Spotify, not only are users driving the creation of playlists, but so are labels and bands who are making playlists of their favorite bands or music that shares a similar tone, or again a similar idea that is expressed in tags that can be traced to other websites. And similarly, live music is changing because of social media. Bands can interact with fans and vice versa to say, what do you want us to play when we come to your town? And by going on the website or voting via Twitter or on their Facebook page, fans can be like, I want to hear this song, and as the votes tally,